if you promise me free medical care if I stay in the military, that when I get out, I'll have free medical care for the rest of my life, and all of a sudden you're saying, oh, well, you know, we're going to reconsider that. That makes the government a profound liar.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. We've got Kris Goldsmith back, our resident Nazi hunter / sedition hunter. And Kris, a lot of Americans are about to enter the find out stage of F around and find out. And at the very top of that list, amazingly, are veterans, a lot of whom voted for Donald Trump. You said this on a recent viral TikTok. You said there are going to be millions of veterans, many of whom actually voted in favor of Trump, quite stupidly, who over the next 4 years are going to find out that people like me, you and me, we're not lying, that Donald Trump's objective is to relieve billionaires of taxes. It's not to help veterans. What are you seeing coming down the pike?
Yeah. So, I've been speaking with some attorneys who are preparing for the Trump administration to just completely undermine the way that veterans benefits and access to healthcare works. There is a lot that the Trump administration can do without going through the formal rules process to change the way that medical benefits are administered, distributed, and the biggest thing that conservatives have been looking at for a long time is completely undermining the way that disability payments work. Now, the lie that they use is they say, well, disability payments are made to compensate you for lost income. And this payment system was really developed in the time of factories. So if somebody lost a hand, they would receive, 30% of whatever expected outcome they'd get because they lost a hand, and it makes them less capable in a factory. That's a lie. That's not true. You're being paid because you lost a hand, not because you're not as productive. And the other big lie about disability payments is that they're a drain on the system. Disability payments, much like universal basic income, have been shown to keep people stable. People who have disabilities, it keeps their head above water, especially in times that they're struggling. Something that I've gone through several times, since I returned home from Iraq in 2005.
You make this really insightful observations that Republicans talk a big game about the cost of war. And you even have front runners for major nominations, major cabinet positions like Pete Hegseth at SecDef, who have built their careers on this, anti-interventionism or something. I mean, Pete has been a recent convert to that. But it doesn't apply to the cost of taking care of those who fight those wars, right? It's all about feeding this isolationism. It's not actually about limiting the cost of wars, the main burden of which is shouldered by those who fight them after they come home.
I'm old enough to remember when Pete Hegseth was the leader of a group called Vets for Freedom, which really spun up to counter the anti-war veterans movement that I was a part of after I came home from the Army. I mean, I remember meeting these guys, and they were mean and vicious, right? The goal of anti-war vets, of which I think most vets identify as generally anti-war, especially after they've served in combat, their objective was to undermine the service of those of us who came home and spoke out. It wasn't until very recently that Pete Hegseth adopted this anti-globalism thing, right? Wherein we are not working to protect democracy and those who fight for it around the world. Instead, we're strictly working to protect the oligarchs, right? I think people who say that we started wars for oil are very, very much oversimplifying things. But that's where Trump and Hegseth live, is they don't want to fight for freedom. They don't want to fight for what's morally right or just or good. They want to fight for their own economic benefit and the benefit of billionaires. Because who fights? It's everyday people like us. It's everyday people like us who pay the price so that billionaires can use people like Pete Hegseth, a veteran, to lobby against our own benefits and to deny us the access to the care that is necessary, not just to keep us productive and in the economy, but to keep our quality of life anywhere, within the spectrum of acceptable or decent.
And this is a test case for the rest of society. I mean, vets are going to be the first to decide whether or not to push back, but a lot of groups out there have their benefits on the chopping block. How do we communicate to folks what's at stake? I feel like a broken record here, because there's that saying, they'll forgive you for being wrong. They'll never forgive you for being right. So we can't make this an I told you so, even though it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, as you started the segment, like they did the FA part, it's time for the FO. When people's parents and people's grandparents start losing their Social Security benefits, their Medicare, their Medicaid, that's going to be something that people notice right away. Even if the Trump administration and this Republican Congress comes in and sets out a date to raise the retirement age for my generation, millennials or younger, Gen Z, they're going to see a really strong reaction, because the way that young generations feel, and I think this is right, particularly for Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they have not had any agency to shape the way the world is today. But the boomers, who are ultimately the ones who control Congress right now, who have been the policy-making powerhouse in Washington for the last 20 years, if they're going to get to retire at 65 and we have to retire at 75, like there's going to be a strong political reaction to that.
Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. So if you want to stay on track with your health this holiday season, go to lumen.me/Ken to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/Ken for 15% off your purchase. Lumen makes a great gift too. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break here to let you know that we'd love to hear from you. Your comments, suggestions, thoughts about future topics and guests. Email us at info@thekenharbaughshow.com and make sure to rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and back to the show. A little bit of a non sequitur, but it's something you and I are both working on, and would love your reaction to how we re-engage with young people for whom the Trumpist politics of the last decade have been seen as normal, right? It's so extraordinary to you and I, but we have to remind ourselves that my kids, for example, haven't known anything else. So it's going to take something else to break through besides Trump is abnormal, because he's not to them.
Yeah. I mean, what we saw in the popular response after Trump was elected, starting with the Women's March, was just this disgust about the way that people were being hurt. I think that Americans have short memories, and a lot of people don't remember the pain that many of our friends and family went through during the first Trump administration. Things like the Muslim ban, things like, appointing judges who deny women's rights to bodily autonomy. Like, these things are going to start happening again, which is going to create kind of to put fuel behind this movement to protect civil rights. But I hope that that the left, that Democrats, take kind of a hard look at the way that the information ecosystem exists and the way that we have broadly, and myself included, chosen to select our audiences rather than, engage, I think, in an arena where there are people who are going to be influenced no matter what. And the Charlie Kirks of the world, backed by billionaires for the last 10, 15 years, the Ben Shapiros of the world who've had, injections of cash from people like Peter Thiel. Those people have a decade and a half head start. We are going to have to, start speaking to young men, especially about what healthy masculinity is. We often demonize toxic masculinity. We can all identify it, right? But I don't think that we do enough to show the positive. Like it takes a real man. It takes bravery, right? These traits that we associate with masculinity. It takes bravery, to talk about your emotions, talk about why you're hurt, right? This, an example, would be Luigi Mangione. I know a lot of people are generally, not caring about what he did, to put it, politely. And I see why they feel that way, because people are frustrated. People are tired of, these oligarchs extracting money and ending the lives of Americans, right? We're all frustrated with that. And Luigi, based on a very cursory review of his social media activity, appears to have kind of flirted with the toxic manosphere on, podcasts, on Twitter, etc. He read Ted Kaczynski, right, the Unabomber's book. We have to start providing material, educational material for this type of person to consume, because nature abhors a vacuum. And when there's a vacuum, the far right is going to fill it, and they're going to put in the ideas into people's heads like, politics doesn't work. We need to use violence instead, right? That is what extremism, that's what terrorism is. And though I understand why people are, permissive, I think, of what Luigi did, we don't want to live in a society where violence becomes acceptable that way. That's not good for democracy. A democracy does not survive that type of revolution.
No, it doesn't. Quick check in on the extremism front. Donald Trump has said he would pardon the insurrectionists, including those who beat cops. He has intimated that he would like to see those who went after the insurrectionists, the J6 investigators, go to jail. What are you working on at Veterans Fighting Fascism right now?
So one of the things that we're going to, I think, have to play a leading role in is unifying mainstream veterans organizations to maintain their backbone. In the immediate wake of January 6th, when we saw actual, symbols, not just of the military services, but of the old school VSOs, of which I'm a member of, like VFW, we saw their symbols flown at January 6th by the insurrectionists, by people who attempted to end our democracy. And while I think most of these VSOs were somewhat lauded for their statements after that, their statements were carefully crafted. They said any one of our members who is convicted for having, participated in this insurrection, this riot, this violence, whatever, anyone who's convicted, they'll lose their lifetime membership. If you're waiting until someone's convicted, that shows that you're not willing to do the work. You're not willing to stop extremism within your own ranks until a judge and jury and a prosecutor have done the hard work for you. And I think that's completely unacceptable. As we've seen, it's taken 4 years and it will take more time to convict all of these people. If you have a known member of VFW or American Legion or Student Veterans of America, name any veterans organization who was part of that riot, that veterans organization should immediately remove them because they violated their oath. They violated the moral code that we all joined the military and swore an oath to. We swore an oath to the Constitution, and they tried to end our Constitution with violence and install a fascist dictator.
It's going to be doubly difficult given the fact that the commander-in-chief was the provocateur, was the ringleader of this, and a pardon. I'm not sure about the legal niceties here, but a pardon is an exoneration of sorts. Does that still count as a conviction? And I mean, it certainly does in my mind and your mind. And pardons notwithstanding, these organizations need to hold their ground and say insurrection is bad.
Yeah. And they need to hold their ground and say that it is unacceptable to, arbitrarily deny care to veterans because, the VA is going to get filled with bigots, right? Like these veteran service organizations are going to have to hold their ground and be brave. There are certain organizations, colleagues that I used to work with. I was at a major VSO, Vietnam Veterans America, one of the big six. My feelings, and I think the feelings from everybody in the community, was a lot of shame when we watched our colleagues at the American Legion, for example, their former leadership would go and do anything, smiling in the background while Donald Trump trashed veterans and trashed our country, right? We can't allow that to happen this time around. These VSOs need to stand up for what they know is right. And if their members want to throw a fit over it, like, they need to have that conversation. Right. Like, if their members are pro-insurrectionists, maybe the organization ought not to exist anymore.
With you 100%, Kris. Thanks for your voice and your leadership. We'll check in again soon.
Thanks a lot, brother. Have a good one.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.